Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 233, the episode that did not want to get birthed. Poor Anissa is scarred for life from technical issues from this episode, but we got through it. Her and I, we rallied. We had to bail on Mike, but just, sometimes you got to leave people behind, and Mike's internet connection was not keeping up. Anissa was barely hanging on, and hard decisions had to be made. Sorry, Mike. So we have a fun episode for you. Anissa and I one-on-one talking about stationary sanders, shop organization, what you do with old jigs, things like that. And the age-old subject comes back. How do you deal with squeeze out? It's been a little while since I have mentioned the e-letter. If you just subscribe to our normal e-letter, you'll get 2 emails a week. One on Wednesdays about a video workshop, and one on Saturdays that includes everything that we worked on the entire week. So head on over to finewoodworking.com/newsletter and sign up. We won't harass you. There's a checkbox. If you want to get special offers and things like that, you can. If you don't, sign up for the e-letter. I've heard from a few people that they didn't know about things that we've done, and that is the absolute best way of keeping up with things. Every single week we send out everything we did. Of course, you can keep up with us on social media, but it's a lot easier to miss things on social media. The e-letter on Saturdays wraps everything up nicely. So again, finewoodworking.com/newsletter and sign up for the weekly e-letter, and you'll know everything that we're doing. All right, on with the show. Question number 1.
Yet again.
Yeah. This one is from Aaron. I see that a lot of woodworkers have disc sanders for rough stock removal and shaping. And I rarely see stationary belt sanders. Why is that? Is there some advantage to disc sanders that I'm not aware of? They're priced similarly. And to me, it seems that a belt sander is more versatile because it allows you to sand thicker material. Also, belt changes are much easier than disc changes. Can you shed some light on this? So you've worked in somewhat pro shops, which is where I think you normally find belt sanders.
I've done kitchens with one other person.
Okay, yeah, that's what, yeah.
I've done some big jobs in a shop with, as an assistant, helping one person do their work, but I haven't worked in a big production shop. And I don't think either of the shops had stationary belt sanders. I was just doing a really cool shoot with Laura Custom Woodworking, Larissa Huff and Rob Spees, and they had a stationary. Kevin Rodell has a stationary, that disc sander, the stationary.
He's got a big stationary belt sander as well. That because I remember the belt sander, not the disc sander.
Oh, that's funny. I think Bexford has a stationary disc sander, right? Or
yes,
is it stationary belt? It's one or the other.
He has a disc.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I've seen any of them go to those machines, it's always with small parts.
Yep.
So that's a good thing. It's not like you can take a small part to a big sander that's stationary. You can't do that with a handheld belt sander. I guess you can if you're really trying to figure out how to hold the piece and then put the sander on it. But you have a lot more control shaping little pieces and sanding little pieces if the machine is stationary and you're going up to it with your work. I was looking on our site, and we have a lot. Go ahead. Your turn.
We've got the delay again, so the conversation is going to be stilted. I think that a disc sander and a belt sander have places in any shop, but I just recently bought from Matt his old 12-inch disc sander, and I use it all the time now. I used to just have like a 6-inch disc on my lathe that I made a little table for. And I wound up using that a lot and seeing the need for a 12-inch disc sander. Disc sanders are more akin to the physics of a disc sander are more akin to a bandsaw than anything, because you can do very, very small, delicate things with a large disc sander because it is pushing the piece down into the table.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a very, very, very controlled operation. Whereas with a belt sander, you're always kind of fighting the belt from yanking that piece. Kevin Rodell, he had that big belt sander that he did like a little taper with, I think, at the foot of the bed, and hogged away material faster than anyone could do with a hand plane or whatever. But that's the only time I've been with an author using a big like edge sander, like a big edge belt sander. Whereas a disc sander, I think you can do very, very, very small things with it and very accurately. And this is a table that I made for the belts for my disc sander. And I've just got this piece of hardboard in a groove. And that gives me a perfect registration point, and I can mount a piece to this block and basically do flush sanding perfectly to the edge of this little piece. So for audio only listeners, I apologize. I've got just a piece of MDF with a miter, with a piece of wood to fit in the miter gauge of my disc sander, and then an edge that protrudes up, and I can then reference that edge off of whatever I am sanding. So if I put things on this sled, I can hang it over the edge a 1/16 of an inch. And when I offer it to I've been watching the repair shop, and they say, when I offer this up to the sander, it's going to take off only what's overhanging this extra piece of wood I have here.
Oh, that's cool. So can I see the bottom of the sled?
This just fits in the miter
The other piece.
I have a little rabbit on there.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
That the rabbit butts up against this piece of hardboard, and I can overhang apart from there a 32nd of an inch, and that's what's going to get sanded off, a 32nd of an inch. Luthier's Aaron Kime, who makes these wonderful ukuleles that I just covet. But he, in his bench room, has one machine, and it is a disc sander. And he uses it so much that he has it hooked up to a foot switch. And he hits the foot switch, and his disc sander kicks on, and his vacuum fork kicks on. And so it's like Aaron Kime, he's a ukulele maker. But it's like just a constant part of his day. Just zip, a little bit here, a little bit there. I think a disc sander is a precision tool that can hog away massive amounts of material if you want it to.
Yeah. Also, handheld belt sander. We have a ton of articles on that. And I know this question wasn't specifically about that, but that is a pretty versatile tool too. We have Asa Christiana just did a tool test on them because Chris Bexford recently did Don't Fear the Belt Sander. And that guy's a master with the belt sander. Like he can just do things that nobody would think of doing with the belt sander and do really quality work because he's so used to working with it. You could really go awry using it if you're not being very careful. But we have a bunch of choosing and using belt sanders. I think Mark Edmondson did a article on compact belt sanders being like a really small wonder, I think he calls them. But I definitely think there's a place for all of them, all of it.
If you had the room, would you have Like if I had the room, I would have, and I do have the disc sander, and I have like that rigid oscillating spindle sander, belt sander.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have an edge sander, like a big edge sander. Like I feel like I would maybe use it once a year.
I wonder if it's one of those things, once you started using it, you'd be going to it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I had the room and you were giving me the stationary belt sander, I would totally take it.
Okay. Noted. Thanks. If I ever, yeah. Okay. So let's do our segment, segment potpourri. You know what? I screwed up. This was going to be my disc sander sled was going to be mine, but I've got others because I've been in woodworking hell.
Oh, well, let's hear one.
Well, I've been rebuilding my parents' dining chairs.
I was going to ask you what was going on back there.
Don't do it. Don't do it. When your parents ask you if you can fix the chairs that your dad has glued together 1,500 times over the course of 50 years, don't do it.
You can't really say no.
Well, yeah, you have to do it. This has proven to be more woodworking than I've done in a long time. I mean, like, I am pushing myself here as a woodworker. And you think, oh, I'll take them apart. And, oh, I've got a domino. I'll just zip, zip, zip and put them back together. And it is not that at all. So many angles to try and match, so many different ways of the dominoes not flushing up. I had a moment where I think I dominoed probably 5 or 6 tenons, and I'm pretty sure that the fence on the domino was a little canted. Have you ever had it just not come down perfectly square? And I was dominoing, all of a sudden it just settled into place. Like the whole fence just went click. And I was like, oh no.
Oh.
So I knew immediately that all of the preceding mortises that I cut were wonky.
Off.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. It's been a ride. I've learned a whole heck of a lot. The first one was really, really rough, trying to get past all of the bad dominoing. And, what I wound up doing was do you remember Michael Fortune's biscuit joiner article where he made like a table for the biscuit joiner, almost made it a stationary tool?
Oh, I don't remember that.
Well, there's a biscuit joiner article by Michael Fortune where he made a stationary tool almost. And everything referenced off of this table. I made one of those for the domino. And I just put shims under the domino to raise up the mortise. So again, 1/8 inch hardboard shims to raise the domino up. There's no fence to go wonky. It's one solid piece of plywood. It's turned into a much more accurate tool for me.
A lot of woodworking is all kinds of tricks to just be consistent, just to like dial in repeatability. So much of it is, instead of changing the setting on something, use a spacer, or I can't even think of another example right now, but there are tons of them where you're just making your repeatability as consistent as possible, whether it's just like a stop on your fence or putting a spacer in and taking a spacer out, like whenever you can do something without readjusting, that makes everything more successful. Does that make sense, the way I'm thinking it and it's coming out? And that's like one of the biggest things in woodworking, is just doing the same thing exactly the same way every time.
Yeah. Consistent, repeatable results. Like that's, but every time I work with somebody like Tim Rousseau or especially Tim Rousseau, it's like, I've got this wedge and it makes everything in this chair or this desk or whatever. And it's like, where's my wedge? Stick the wedge there. But like, he's not measuring anything. He's using this one thing to make everything repeatable. I love that. So yeah, these chairs have been kicking my butt. The all-time favorite tool of all time for this week came from last episode. Anyone who listened to the last episode with Mike Michelli, he told me to buy West Systems GFlex Epoxy. And I was doing a webinar with Colonial Williamsburg with him, and he just bought me some West Systems GFlex Epoxy, like the right on dude he is. And it is fantastic.
Oh.
Imagine like 75 minutes of open time.
I'd still mess it up.
It would just be longer and more traumatizing.
25 minutes. You know what? I'm gonna go get a drink of water. I'll be right back. Then I forget or whatever. I still manage to mess it up. But that is a luxury. A lot of open time.
It's wonderful. Where like you're gluing something up, it's not coming together. Just pull it back apart and get it right. And I don't know. I might be hooked. It's
are you one of those? Sorry. Do you like the way epoxy smells, or you don't like epoxy smell? The odor.
It's kind of nice. I kind of like it.
You either like it or you don't.
Really? Is it like cilantro?
I was gonna say cilantro or gasoline.
Yeah, so GFlex Epoxy. It's awesome. It's, the only reason why I can't imagine using it like for everything from here on out is I think it's pretty expensive, and Mike Michelli is going to stop buying it for me eventually. So,
yeah, probably.
Yeah, but there's a complicated glue up. These chairs, I'm doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mortises at a time. So there's 4 joints, 2 dominoes each, and then the front crest rail or the front rail has 1 domino in each. So that's a lot to make happen all at once.
Oh.
75 minutes is a luxury there.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it hard to clean? Are you getting it? Is it harder to clean the epoxy than it is like yellow glue?
He told me just use isopropyl alcohol. I don't have any in the shop, so I've just been using denatured alcohol on a paper towel, and it wipes off super clean. Again, you're not like super rushed for it. So I've actually been clamping up, getting the squeeze out, do a wipe, unclamp it, clean it up a little bit more, put the clamps back on. You're not like that whole mindset of I need this clamped up and leave it is gone. You can be super careful. So yeah, I've been unclamping to get the squeeze out wiped off, and then that's it.
Very cool.
What's your all-time favorite?
I think I'm going with all-time favorite tool. Okay. And that's because I have to be a little cryptic about it in case one of my kids watches this. So my kids made each other gifts for the holidays this year. Aww. And actually, sadly, I'm going to admit this, we started them last holiday season. And then we never finished it. And then we bumped it to maybe there'll be birthday gifts. And then we never finished them for the birthdays. So we almost have them finished. My son made something for his sister, and we also bought a little something to put inside it. They're both making a box of some sort. And so my daughter finished hers for her brother, but She has not received hers because he and I are still going out to work on it. It's almost finished. We're really close. And, obviously he's not using the table saw, but there are some angles in the little box that he's making for her. And so I've been using the digital miter or the digital angle thing, little magnetic box that you put on the saw blade to get the little readout, whatever. What do you call that, Ben?
Angle finder.
You know what I'm talking about?
Digital angle finder.
Yes. Yeah. And I just recently got it and haven't used it that much. It's great. I think it's great. You just pop it on there, turn the blade until you get to the number you want and you're done. And you double check it, but really accurate, really easy to use. I know that's a boring one, right?
No. I have one that I bought. It's like a Harbor Freight one. And it's like maybe $20-25 and super good. Like, I think if you go to a 45 with it, you're going to probably wind up with a square box at the end of it. Mm-hmm. At the time I was doing octagon boxes. So I was doing like 22.5 degree cuts or whatever, or 12.5 degree cuts, whatever. And, there was still some I couldn't go straight to it, and it would be perfect off the saw.
Right.
But yeah, I think my battery died like 3 years ago and I haven't replaced it, and I haven't used it since.
Yeah. It's not something I think I'm going to pull out a ton, but I definitely like it.
Yeah. So what kind of angles are going on in this box? Is he doing like a slanted side box or something? What's going like?
Well, no, he's actually, she's not going to watch this. He's making her a box. She likes to read a lot. So, he wanted to make her a wooden book, just a sculptural piece that was a book. So we talked about that a bunch, and we talked about the idea of making a box that looks like a book rather than just a sculptural piece. And he was pretty torn, but in the end, he decided to do a box so that he could give her something inside the box. And so there are a lot of 45s on there too, but there's, as we're making the spine of the book, I can't remember what the angle was. We just had to kind of rip a little. I say we, but I'm ripping on the table saw. My kid is not ripping on the table saw. So we just had to rip a little angled groove in the, where the spine comes around and there's an indent.
This is cool.
And then it gets wrapped with fabric. So it was really just 45s and then those two angles on the front and back, but it was an excuse to use it. And, that's it. Just a book with a box book.
That reminds me of a project I think Larissa from Lore did, who they're doing like some cool boxes. Have you seen their boxes? Oh, yeah. Like she did like a hamburger box. It's like all this like wacky stuff, and you're like, what is going on down there?
Yes, the hamburger box. I had lunch near the hamburger box. I was just like, oh, look at the layers come off, and it's cool.
I'd steal that thing. Oh my goodness, yeah. But like she made a box for I think it was somebody's Harry Potter book set. Did you see that one? It was like to hold like an original Harry Potter book set or something like that. It's just this crazy elaborate box, but all of the stuff coming out of Lore Woodworking right now has been flooring me. All of their boxes.
Yeah, really
just
cool
like
stuff.
Wacky stuff.
Yeah.
I love it. Super creative. All right, let's take a break.
If you love this podcast, you'll love Find Woodworking Unlimited. Access more than 40 years of articles, how-to videos, and project plans designed to take your craft to the next level. Check it out.
Question number 2 from Kyle. I find that the longer I have this hobby, the more and more jigs I accumulate that I just can't part with. Router templates, table saws, sleds, clamp holders, shooting boards at specific angles, and similar stuff. How do you all manage the life cycle that these things of these things that you make? What do you keep? What do you throw away? Do you disassemble jigs and reuse plywood? How do you organize what you keep? And what is your storage solution for them?
Yikes.
Yeah. The struggle is real, Kyle.
Yeah, no, it is. And universal.
Yeah. Do you have an attic? This isn't fair.
I do have a second floor on my shop. But stuff like that, out of sight is really out of mind, So if you're storing a bunch of stuff up there, you forget that you have it up there. I think I told you guys like a month or two ago that I was in the middle of a complete shop clean out. And I am still, but the only things that I put upstairs are I store lumber up there, but I have a cabinet up there and I put tools in there, like handheld stuff that I know I'm not going to forget it's up there. I'm going to say, oh, you need that router. It's in the cabinet. Mm-hmm. I'm not putting jigs and stuff like that up there because I'll remake them. I'll forget they're there. They'll get lost in some kind of big lumber mess. So I do have storage upstairs, but I'm not going to put stuff like that up there because I may as well not keep it.
Yeah.
If that's the case.
Yep. I get that.
So wall space is good. Like I try and hang all my table saw sleds and stuff like that on nails in the wall or like a screw in the wall or a couple. I probably keep way more than I should. What about you? And also like for shapes of things, like if you're going to pattern route, I think I probably got this from Chris Bexford, and I don't know that he doesn't keep some of the original shapes also. But I have a couple of like oak tag or poster board templates so that if I did need to remake them, but that's just a couple things. I don't have the body of work that he has either. That's
a really good idea though, is to oak tag, because you could put dozens of them in a drawer.
Right.
And still have the important part of the jig.
Yeah. Yes.
Actually,
before you move on, we actually have an article coming out with him about patterns.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little down the road, but yeah, that's the next shoot I'm doing with him is that one.
He has his especially that beam that goes halfway through the shop. There's like such cool stuff just like stuck up on nails there. Yes. And I'm trying to remember what he pulled down one time. I think it was a jig for if he's doing a bunch of like tripod stands and needs to do, the dovetails for small stands. And he'll do it on the slot mortiser.
Yeah.
And he had a jig for that. And he pulled it down and it looked like it was just like this little sled. But then he's got twine tying all of these little teeny tiny pieces together with little eyelets screwed into the side so that he doesn't lose one little piece of this. And it was like, wow, this man takes this very, very seriously. He is not losing one little element of this. But when you do dozens of them, it totally makes sense. I use a lot of jigs. For ukuleles, I use a lot of molds. So I have two main molds, and I've had to throw away. Well, you can tell right where I store most of them, right above my desk. But I've had to throw away some because I knew that I was going to hold on to them and never use them again. And my shop is just small enough that I need to be very deliberate with what I keep. I gave up on table saw sleds. I use a miter gauge for everything now. When I bought my table saw from Mike, he gave me all of his sleds. And I think he gave me like 4 or 5 sleds, and it was taking up a serious amount of storage. And one day I unscrewed them, and I've reused every bit of those for all sorts of things. This jig that I held up before, this is an old Pekovich table saw sled. I have part of a Pekovich table saw sled is a ukulele neck. I mean, I reuse every piece of plywood. MDF is impossible for me to throw away. I reuse it all the time. And if I have a piece of Baltic birch in a sled or jig or something, that's gold. I love Baltic birch. So
yeah, I agree. Up on the second floor, also, I have a stack of plywood, like an MDF, just offcuts and pieces, because that stuff is always, it's worth the space that it takes up to keep them kicking around. Because what are you going to do? Go buy a 4x8 sheet of plywood when you need a scrap that's 1x3, whatever size you need? It's just worth it to keep that stuff kicking around.
I've actually started even keeping the little pieces of MDF for like you to use as sanding blocks or little wedges to go. And I have a drawer under my bench. I on the side of the road, I found these killer like 50s drawer cabinets, and I moved everything around under my bench to fit them in there. And I have a drawer labeled blocks, and it's just all of the little teeny tiny blocks that I have for this little purpose, that little purpose. They're all Sharpied on them, keep, because it'll be like a little piece of pine, but it's got that angle on it. So you write keep on it so you don't burn it starting a fire. But I really like the idea of using oak tag to trace a template and then move on with your life. Because I've had templates that I've held on to for years, and eventually they just get burned or whatever. And what was the point of hanging on to them all that time?
I mean, if you're making the same thing over and over and over again, it's definitely worth not having to remake that template. But if you don't think you're going to make another one of those for another 3 or 4 years, get rid of it. Trace it, get rid of it.
Yeah.
It's like balancing the hoarder, the if it doesn't bring you joy theory.
Yeah. This brings me joy. This doesn't. I think maybe like a good in between. For a lot of my templates, I start them on like 1/8" hardboard, just because it's really quick and easy to shape, and then I pattern route MDF from the 1/8" hardboard, and I wind up keeping the MDF. I should probably keep the hardboard, and those can go in a pile and take up far less room. Pekovich will store, he's got an attic as well, and he has tubs, and all of the patterns and templates and everything for our project goes in that tub.
An individual tub for that project?
Yeah, so he knows that if he's remaking this thing or teaching a class or whatever, he just pulls that tub out and everything is in there. But that's definitely, because his attic, I don't think you can even stand up in his shop attic. Right. So it's not real usable space. It's only good for storage of jigs. But that's really nice. Yeah.
He's also teaching though too, so it makes a lot of sense to store that stuff.
Yeah.
I like that kind of organization and that makes me feel good. That satisfies that part of me that just needs to have everything like in its place and organized, which is so rare for me these days.
The thing that I've been struggling with is I made a long time ago, like these roll around boxes that I could store tools in. Cause before I came here, I was thinking maybe I'd wander into carpentry or trim carpentry or whatever. And I wanted to be able to be very mobile with all of my tools. So I made these big boxes that like a handle pulls up and they actually like turn into a hand truck kind of, and you can put all the sustainers in there and wheel them around. I can't throw those away and they take up so much room. And
yeah,
I just don't know what to do with them. I just brought another one down into the basement, and thankfully they're empty shells, so you could put things in them, other things that you should have thrown away, like a broken speaker that I'll be carrying around forever. But that, and I made a toolbox when we had the old shop at 191 for all my hand tools. And it just gets moved from here to there, and there's a little rolling cart, and it's like those things that you spend a lot of time on and you make them nice for a certain situation, and then the situation changes and you don't need that toolbox anymore. And you know, I'm never like, if I go take a class, I can throw my tools in a backpack. It doesn't matter, you know?
Yeah. Well, my take on purging stuff like that or anything is invariably I'll like when you're going through, and I made a joke about the If It Brings You Joy, but I haven't read that book. And I can't retrieve the title of it in my head right now. Marie, whatever.
Kondo.
What?
Marie Kondo.
Yes. You know, I have not read that book, but you kind of like when you're purging stuff in your shop or you're cleaning or you're going through your closet or your kids' toys or whatever, you kind of have, you know when it's time to get rid of something. You don't even have to think about it. You're like, oh, this is gone. This is gone. This is gone. It's when you stop and you have to debate it. Well, should I get rid of this? Should I not get rid of this? I kind of always err on the side, just keep it a little longer. You've had it here for this long. You just know when it's time to chuck something.
See, I'm the opposite. I err on the side of just chuck it. And because the clutter weighs me down more than not having it. And
me too. But then haven't you ever had have it a week after you get rid of it? You're like, oh, that's why I was saving that.
Yeah. I'm really embarrassed because like Barry brought over a bag of scrap because I was like, oh yeah, I'll use it to start fires in the house. You know, it's great kindling.
Oh yeah.
And there's like this huge pile of scrap that Barry has deemed just burn it, please. And I see Roz like playing with a piece of wood out of it. I was like, that's nice. No. And then I'm picking through Barry's like, please burn this and make it its last use. And I'm going, dude, what's wrong with you? This is good stuff. And
I've done that. I've done that with some of Barry's scraps too. But also, did he give you like? Did he give you giant bags of shavings, like plain shavings?
No, I have a spot in the yard that he just comes over and dumps them. So that's
That's awesome. Yeah, but I've done that.
Or like I'll be in McLaughlin's shop and he has this, and maybe part of it is, so I'm working on instruments now, so a small piece of wood is really nice.
Tell yourself whatever you need to.
Well, but like I'm looking at McLaughlin's garbage can and I'm going, oh man, is this garbage or is this like saving it for later scrap? And I want to ask him, but it's like, I don't think we're at that level yet where I can be like, hey, you throwing this out? Or because he might just be nice and give it to me. But if you're throwing it out, I want to keep it.
I do the same thing at Bexpert's. He has And even his scrap, he's so organized, which is a huge part of why he's so successful and so efficient. But even his wood, it goes in different bins. Like, this is firewood. This is, I possibly use that. Like, and these bins sit under the steps, and I'm constantly, embarrassingly, like you say, like, I'm constantly just eyeballing that bin of stuff that he's throwing away, doing the same thing. And he would give it to me. He'd load the whole thing in my car if I wanted. So I sit there and I just look at it thinking, just don't avert your eyes. Don't look.
In the meantime, we each have our own scrap piles that it's something about other people's scrap.
I don't know what it is.
I don't mind burning my scrap, but man, Barry, you need to chill out. There's some good stuff there. I have a pile that I keep meaning to ask him about. Next time I'm on a video chat with him, what's this? What kind of wood is this? Yeah. Actually, that pile of poplar on my joiners from him. And I was like, yo. He's like, oh, you can burn this, right? I was like, no, that's good. It's poplar. Whatever. All right, question number 4. Kyle, we can't help you, man. We can't. Get a Pekovich attic and some bins, and I don't know, man. Yeah. Question number 3 is from Scott. There's nothing I hate more than trying to clean up glue squeeze out. My current prevention cleanup strategy for squeeze out is to not put too much glue on whatever I'm gluing. Let the glue fully harden before trying to clean up any squeeze out, or some combination of a chisel, card scraper, knife, sandpaper to work and remove the hardened squeeze out. I try to be as careful as I can, but often I find myself damaging some surfaces when doing cleanup. Yep. Not to mention the fairly large amount of time it takes. How do you recommend prevent squeeze out for the inevitable bit of glue that does squeeze out? How do you recommend to efficiently clean it up without damaging any parts?
I like this question. Well,
I know.
Go ahead.
So, I totally understand where Scott is coming from here. And I have been around too many people who are far too good of a woodworker to not do what they do.
But they all do something different.
Okay, fine. Tim Russo wipes it down with water and a rag. And Tim Russo does it. That's what I'm doing. It's just the way it is. I'm sorry. It's I know the perspective of oh, you're introducing blah, 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 blah. Tim Russo does it. Beat that.
Tim Russo done. Tim Russo did a great article. I did it with him, mostly. Matt Kenny stepped in and took the photographs for me, which I remember being really grateful for. I can't remember why, but so he did strategies for squeeze out. And I wanted to find out what issue number that was in. So I checked to see, I typed into our little index that you sent me fairly recently. Mm-hmm. Does everybody out there know that we have that index?
I think we've talked about finewoodworking.com/magazine-index.
Oh, wow. That thing it's brilliant. Gives you the issue number, and then it gives you the page number that everything's on, and it searches and it finds everything. Yeah. And not
that's,
like it.
But that's Liz that makes that go. She deserves all the credit for that.
He should get tons of credit for that thing. Yeah. It's fantastic. So I typed in squeeze out because I just wanted to find the article by Tim Russo. And we do not just have one article on squeeze out. We have about 5 of them. And so I was perusing through them, like Michael Fortune wrote one, Heinrich Varhu, Jim Shapiro, Tim Russo. There are a bunch of them. I can send you the list too if you want, Ben. But so I thought, well, let me check these out, because what could possibly could be contained in 5 different articles about squeeze out. The information and the approach to all of these articles is so different. So, for example, like Tim Rousseau talks about taking the glue off at different points, and why you should do it, when he does it, when he thinks is the best time to take it off, how he gives you like little tools to use for getting it out.
It's got that little wood sliver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the Varhu article, he talks about different ways of applying the glue, and he'll give you different situations. Like, do you put it on the mortise or the tenon? And he explains why you don't put it on the tenon, but you put the glue inside the mortise, and tons of tips like that. So basically he's saying, if you put the glue on the tenon and then you stick the tenon in the mortise, that's going to push all the glue up and you get more squeeze out. If you're just putting the glue in the mortise, you're pushing the glue down and you're not going to get as, so he shows you a lot of ways to minimize the squeeze out to begin with.
All right.
And then there's pre-finishing and waxing whenever you can.
Yeah.
So like there is so much information on how to deal with squeeze out, how to prevent squeeze out, how to build and chamfer so that you are building and creating little nooks and crannies for the glue to go in, so you're preventing the squeeze out. It's fascinating.
I don't know if I would. I think I have erred or attempted to entirely prevent squeeze out and not used enough glue. And that is the scenario. That is the fix that I least like. I'm sorry. I gotta see some squeeze out. Otherwise I'm just gonna debate for the rest of my life.
Yeah. I agree.
And Matt Wada, he had this little, when we were shooting that video, he had like a little scraper blade, right? You know, just, and he would flip out if he couldn't find a scraper blade. It was like his little blankie or something, because that was his wipe up the squeeze out thing. And I have right next to all my glue bottles, I have a little cut off scraper blade that I use that for wiping up squeeze out. And now recently I've started saving old credit cards, because
that's a good idea.
Is plastic, won't harm anything, easy to clean off, won't rust. I'm definitely going for squeeze out. I wipe off the majority with a scraper, plastic or metal. And then if there is enough there, I will take a wet rag to it, because I have messed up. I'm with you, Scott. I have messed up many things thinking I will get to the squeeze out at the perfect time, which I'm not a pro. I'm not in my shop all day. A lot of times it's at night. Yeah. I come back the next day, totally hard, wind up ripping up wood trying to get the glue off. I'd rather just tackle it right away with wet paper towel or something. What do you do in your work? Because you research, you've given all of the articles.
I pre-finish as much as I can. But then I do err on probably too little glue, it's not too little, because I've never had anything come apart. I try not to use way too much glue. Like just the tiniest little bit of beading makes me feel good. Mm-hmm. If it's not something that really, that doesn't matter, if there's going to be squeeze out, I'll be pretty liberal with the glue. But if it's a nice piece of furniture, I do take it off when it's pretty wet still. I can get behind the wet rag, the damp rag. I've seen people who just get the toothbrush and it's just like loaded with water and they're scrubbing that thing and their work is stunning. So everybody does something different. And, if it gets you to the end point and it looks good, that's fine.
Yeah.
I can't bring myself to just like slather the water on, but a damp cloth I'm okay with. And I do like the wooden, just making like a wooden scraper, like a soft wooden scraper to get in like little tiny corners.
Yeah. Another thing that I have is I have an old, or actually it was a brand new, when we were cleaning out the shop, there was a jackrabbit blade, just the blade. And it was I grabbed it because I had a Veritas jack plane. And I was like, spare blade. And I opened it up. It was like, oh crap, this isn't going to work at all. And I've used that for just like as a little flush plane or whatever, but just a perfect, just get that in there and it's sharp and I can just cut that glue at just the perfect time. You're not trying to, I use it in place of a gooseneck chisel, which is a tool I had always wished I had, was a gooseneck chisel for cleaning up glue and things like that. But now I use that in place of it. And you're frozen again. Hey, I think that's it for this episode of Shop Talk Live because I can't take the internet anymore. I'm going to end this episode and go for a hike in the woods and sit by a pond and be peaceful and not connected to the internet. So I'm going to read, I don't know if Anissa's coming back. She's frozen. Let's see. Listener comments. We had a really good one and I'm going to read most of it. I'm an artist with a small a, who under the current classification standards would be more accurately described as a maker. My preferred medium is wood, but I have never considered myself a woodworker. You're back, Anissa. I'm ending it. I'm reading the outro. Hi. Sorry. I accumulate techniques from a variety of sources that will fill my needs for current or future builds. One day I was casting around for a podcast and to broaden my woodworking knowledge. I came across Shop Talk Live. The first episode I listened to was with Megan Fitzpatrick, where she talked about the importance of good combination square and how to check one for accuracy. It only took me half an episode to realize that this podcast was very special. The idea of a successful woodworking podcast seems impossible, but Shop Talk Live definitely manages to bring this thing we love to life from as many angles as possible. I'm sure if they could figure out a way to get that fresh cut lumber smell to the audience, they would. I've become an unlimited member in no small part due to this podcast. And I put that in there because Mike was going to be on there and I was going to be like, see, Mike, I should get a cut of everyone who says they get, I want a commission. There's a lot of people who get the unlimited membership because of the podcast. And I cannot tell you how much leeway that buys me with the higher ups. And Anissa's frozen again. Oh, God. All right. So thank you for everyone who gets an unlimited membership. It really does, really does help us out here. So that's all for this episode of Shop Talk Live. If you have questions you'd like us to answer on the show, send them into shoptalk@taunton.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please click that thumbs up button. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. And Anissa's back.
Hi.
Say bye, Anissa.
Bye. You froze. I don't know if I'm frozen, but you're certainly frozen. I'm going to take a photo of you. Frozen Ben.